Welcome to CINEPRO, where we bring your favorite movies back to life with quick recaps, hidden details, and everything you missed. The story opens with a young woman tied upside down on a table, a victim of extreme cruelty. Her legs tremble uncontrollably like she's barely holding on to life. She wants to scream in pain, but no sound escapes her. Her mouth has been mercilessly sewn shut. Her body is covered with deep, horrific wounds, which two people are stitching up in a way that sends chills down your spine. This isn't healing, it's torture. They're reopening old wounds, piercing the same injuries over and over, making her agony even worse. Now the story flashes back to the year 1609. At that time, the Kingdom of Hungary was ruled by Elizabeth Bey, a woman whose beauty, courage, and wealth were the stuff of legends. Every young woman at court looked up to her. Any girl chosen to serve in her castle felt incredibly lucky. Today, a young woman named Margaret has just arrived at the castle. She's been personally chosen by the Queen to be her private assistant. Margaret and her family see this as a once-in-a-lifetime blessing. Margaret is from a royal bloodline too. Although her family hasn't been financially well off, Queen Elizabeth herself sent for her. When Margaret first stepped into the castle and saw the Queen greeting her in person, she was overwhelmed with pride and happiness. But in her excitement, she didn't notice the strange, heavy atmosphere. Every girl in the palace looked scared, as if haunted by something unseen, and the whole place felt eerily silent. At that moment, a maid walks by and accidentally drops what she's carrying. She's so terrified, she starts shaking. Another young woman, Ava, rushes to help her. Just then, Queen Elizabeth appears and gently takes the maid's hand, leading her inside with a kindness that seems almost out of place. Margaret is still in shock. The stories she'd heard were coming to life right before her eyes. And even though she'd arrived only as a servant, she's being treated like a guest of honor. The Queen gives Margaret a brief history of the castle, a gift from her late husband. Elizabeth was married at just 11, famous for her stunning beauty, and her husband was known as Hungary's greatest warrior. Their marriage was celebrated far and wide, but fate had other plans. The king died young from a chronic illness. The Queen grows emotional as she recalls this, and Ava gently escorts Margaret to her room. The chamber is grand and beautiful. Margaret tries to start a conversation with Ava, but something feels off. Ava doesn't answer any of her questions. Ava sees herself as ordinary, while Margaret is special. Margaret replies humbly, "I do all the work at home myself, just like a maid. So, what's the difference between us?" Ava responds, "Seriously, even if you work with your own hands, royal blood runs through your veins. I'm just a commoner. Friendship between us isn't possible." Later, we see Eva talking with the Queen about Margaret. The Queen seems pleased both because Margaret is of royal blood and even more because she's pure. What the Queen means by purity and royal blood will become clear later. Next, Ava starts applying a thick red substance like makeup to the Queen's face. She finishes one cheek but runs out as she moves to the other. Nervously, Eva tells the Queen. The Queen's anger flares, but she controls it. "You know I hate running out of this, and it's your responsibility to keep it stocked." Terrified, Ava does something that would make anyone's skin crawl. She presses hard on a deep cut on her own hand, collects the blood that drips out on a brush, and applies it to the Queen's face. It becomes clear that the red substance isn't just makeup, it's blood. The Queen literally uses blood as cosmetics. Though this is horrifying, it's normal for everyone present. No one seems disturbed. The Queen even paints her lips with it. Later, Margaret dines with the Queen. Seeing the lavish feast laid out, her eyes widen in disbelief. Back home, simply having enough to eat was a struggle. Her two sisters were sent to a convent just to reduce the family's expenses. The Queen shows concern for Margaret's health and says, "You need to eat more fruit and honey. They nourish and cleanse the blood." She orders a maid to bring honey. When the maid hands it over, Margaret notices the woman's hands covered with fresh, deep wounds. Shocked, Margaret asks, "How did you get those cuts on your hands?" The maid replies nervously, "It happened while working in the kitchen," but Margaret isn't convinced. Then the Queen calls her pet dogs to introduce them to Margaret. But these aren't normal pets. They're wild and feral. Margaret isn't the only one frightened. Even the other maids keep their distance. Still, the Queen insists everyone must feed the dogs by hand. Despite everything, Margaret feels happy, unaware of what's coming. She even wants to be friends with Ava. But Ava has already made it clear that's impossible. Later, after Eva leaves, Margaret goes to bed. In the middle of the night, she suddenly hears someone sobbing. Curious, she steps outside and asks Eva, "What was that? Was someone crying?" Eva replies without blinking, "Nothing. The wind up here in the mountains makes noises like that. Go back to sleep." But Margaret senses something's wrong. She grabs a torch and heads toward the sound. It's coming from behind a door leading to a terrace. Just as she's about to step out, a guard stops her. Going out there at this hour is strictly forbidden. But in the very next scene, the horrifying truth is revealed. A brutal act is happening on the other side of the terrace. An innocent young woman is chained in heavy iron shackles, her body coated in honey while starving dogs are unleashed on her. Watching this nightmare unfold from above is the queen herself, who seems to be taking terrible pleasure in the spectacle. It becomes clear that this girl's life is being put at risk purely for the queen's twisted amusement. Before, in the castle, a girl was tied down to a table and tortured, and the queen found sick delight in watching it. The wounds on the girl were cut open and sewn back repeatedly by Queen Elizabeth herself and her trusted assistant Ava. This made it clear Ava was complicit in these horrific acts. It also hinted that Margaret had been brought here for a similarly terrible fate, but Margaret had no idea about this dark reality. She had started to believe Ava was her true friend. When she noticed deep wounds on Ava's hands, she immediately tried to help treat them. But looking closer, Margaret saw that Ava had many serious wounds, some so badly infected they were close to turning septic. Not knowing how to help, Margaret asked, "Why don't you go see a doctor?" Ava didn't answer. She knew the queen would never allow it. Still, since Margaret hadn't yet seen the queen's monstrous side, she boldly went to the queen and asked that Ava be allowed medical treatment. To keep up appearances and hide her secrets, the queen agreed. Before going to the doctor, Margaret asked Ava seriously, "I've noticed every maid here has terrible injuries. How is it possible they all hurt themselves like this?" Ava stayed silent and walked away without a word. As Margaret cared for Ava, Ava began to develop feelings for her. She believed the cruelty she had inflicted on others wouldn't be done to Margaret. She decided to get Margaret out of this nightmare without the queen finding out. But before she could act, the queen herself ordered Ava to bring Margaret to her. Ava was shocked. She hadn't expected Margaret to be targeted so soon. Terrified, Ava pleaded with the queen, "We can't do this to Margaret. She comes from a noble family. Even if they're not wealthy, they still have standing. If something happens to her, her family will ask questions." The queen smiled coldly. "You're the one who started all this. Why are you suddenly scared?" Ava had no answer and quietly walked away. In a flashback, we see that after the king died, the queen fell into deep grief and illness. The mental and physical toll even took away her beauty, pushing her further into depression. That's when Ava came into her life. She cared for her, inspired her, and helped improve her health. But the loss of her beauty became a tragedy the queen couldn't accept. It ate away at her. One day, Ava accidentally made a mistake. While brushing the queen's hair, she pulled too hard. The queen flew into a rage. She grabbed nearby objects and brutally beat Ava, striking her so hard her head split open and started bleeding. Drops of blood fell onto the queen's face, and when she wiped them off in the mirror, she felt as if her lost beauty had returned with the touch of that blood. The red glow on her skin reminded her of the radiant face she once had. From that moment, the queen snapped out of her depression. She began using the blood like a beauty treatment, a dark ritual that Ava was forced to continue by torturing young women. Thanks to the blood, the queen's appearance grew even more stunning than before, but her obsession to keep this beauty alive turned deadly. She became convinced that the more pain a girl endured before dying, the more powerful her blood would be for preserving beauty. This twisted belief led her to torture girls in increasingly cruel ways. Every day she invented new methods of inflicting pain and death, turning her horrific acts into a form of twisted entertainment. Ava, against her will, became part of this savage game. She wanted to stop the madness, but now the queen had ordered her to bring Margaret to her chambers. Following the queen's orders, Ava found Margaret, and in an attempt to save her, she revealed the awful truth. This castle was a horrifying laboratory where young women were tortured and their blood used in the queen's beauty rituals. She begged Margaret to run and tell the police, but the truth was so unbelievable that Margaret didn't trust her. Afraid of Ava instead, she fled right into the room where the queen was waiting for her. The moment Margaret stepped inside, the queen seized her. Ava's attempt to protect Margaret ended in tragedy. Both fell victim to the queen's cruelty. Neither could escape the nightmare. The queen tortured them beyond all limits of her sick imagination. Ava was never important, just a tool for the queen's twisted pleasure. And in the end, the queen bathed in Margaret's blood, unaware that someone had managed to escape this terrifying castle. It was another girl brought here just like Ava once was. Somehow she uncovered the truth and cleverly escaped, taking the Queen's diary with her where every victim was recorded. When the diary reached the police, the Queen was immediately arrested. This revelation exposed the Queen's true identity to the whole world. She was punished in the very room where her cruelty began. The room was sealed off completely, only a small slot left for food. But even in captivity, the Queen couldn't let go of her vile addiction. She started using her own blood as a beauty source, torturing herself, deluded by the hope that after death, she'd reunite with her late husband and that she'd look beautiful for him. Time passed, and one day the Queen was found dead in her cell. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all new updates. See you in the next video. Goodbye.